Hey everyone, Tesla Tom here. Thank you so much for joining us today on Ludicrous Feed. Behind me is my 2015 Tesla Model S, which I purchased in 2016 when it was 6 months of age and had 8,000 kilometers on the clock. Today, on the 30th of January 2023, it has over 107,000 kilometers. And as of November 2023 this year, the 8-year battery and powertrain warranty will be expiring, and of course I'll be doing a special video to mark that occasion. However, in this video I'll be performing a real-world urban range test for my Model S behind me here for two reasons. One, because I'm genuinely curious, and two, well, as I said, the battery warranty will be expiring very soon, so I'd like to know what the real-world battery range is for this vehicle and whether I need to send it back to Tesla for any warranty issues before that expires. Okay, so in planning for this video, I thought to myself, how can I best estimate the range for this vehicle? I thought of three options. One, I could either go for a very long drive on the highway and just basically run it to zero, but then I said, I don't really drive this car on road trips anymore, so it's not realistic. That's not what I use this car for. The second option was to charge this car to 100% and then just basically drive it for a few days until it reached close to zero. But the only problem with that method is that Teslas are known for phantom drain, which is basically every day it loses about 1 to 2% of charge due to functions like battery management systems and Sentry mode for vehicles that have them. So you do lose a bit of range from functions like that, and I wanted to show what the driving range was for the vehicle. So the third option I thought was a compromise, and that is basically to charge the vehicle every night to 80%, like what I do every day of my life, and then basically every day show you how much I can drive with this car when it's topped to 80%, and then estimate how much the range of this car is over 10 separate days. And that way it replicates more what I do on a day-to-day basis with this vehicle. Okay, so here is the Tesla Model S infotainment screen, and you can find this very handy page under trips in the settings area, and it shows you what the odometer is, 107,095 kilometers as of the 30th of January right there, so you can see, I can prove that to you every day. And there are a couple of trip computers, which I'm going to reset one of them. I'm going to keep this one going, trip A, because over time you can see what the average energy usage is and the efficiency of the vehicle. So over the last 20,000 kilometers, I've used 4,000 odd kilowatt hours, and the efficiency is 204 watt hours per kilometer, which is about what it has been over the length of time I've had ownership of this vehicle. So that hasn't changed too much in terms of efficiency. So I'm going to reset trip B for this video here, reset trip B. And that way we can start from zero again. And also what's really handy is this one here, since last charge. So this is today's stats. So I've driven 40 kilometers requiring 8 kilowatt hours. And again, the efficiency is pretty similar, 198 watt hours per kilometer. So that will change pretty much every day or every morning when I start this vehicle. And we'll plot, like I said, each day over 10 days, 10 days that I drive this vehicle. And from there we can get a good estimate as to how much range this vehicle actually has for 100% charge. And I'll try and show you what it's like at the end of every day, basically from end to end, i.e. from my home to wherever I'm going and then back home again. And that way, if you drive back to your origin every day, i.e. my house, then that should negate any changes in gradient or any other conditions that may affect this experiment. Okay, so here are the 10 recordings for the month of February, and there is a gap between the 8th and the 20th of February, and that's when I had the loan of the Hyundai Ioniq 5. For more details, check out that video. But for each date, I recorded the start and end percentage state of charge, recorded the difference, and then recorded the data from the car, including the range since the last charge, the efficiency in watt hours per kilometer, and then from there I extrapolated the 100% range of the vehicle based on the same driving style. I also recorded the temperature range for each day, the amount of precipitation, and also the maximum speed I drove at for that day. And in the final column, the number of journey legs for that day. And that's important because the amount of phantom losses may have affected the final state of charge for the day. And for those of you who are interested, I have photographic evidence of each of these data points for each of these dates in a Dropbox link, which I will leave in the video description below. And then looking at the final two rows of this table, I have added all the differences in state of charge for each day for a total of 201%. And I've also added the total range, which is 583 kilometers, and then the efficiency on average is 188.5 watt hours per kilometer. And then finally, the extrapolated 100% range for the totals is 290 kilometers if we were to use all the data points available to us. And as you can see, the range of the vehicle was between 255 kilometers and 325 kilometers for these 10 recordings. Alright, so let's have a look at the Electric Vehicle Database website, which is a resource I often use to examine the real-world range of an EV. And there it is, the Tesla Model S 70D, built between April 2015 and April 2016, which is pretty much exactly my car. And it says that it has a 66.5 kilowatt hour battery, which has a lithium-ion NMC composition, i.e. nickel, manganese, cobalt. And according to the EV database website, had a real range of 354 kilometers when built, and has an efficiency of 188 watt-hours per kilometer, which is almost exactly the same efficiency recorded over the 10 days. And delving further into the website, we'll start to see why real range becomes an issue for EVs, because according to the EV database website, the real range they determined is 354 kilometers. However, when this car was built, here in Australia we were still using the NEDC ratings, which is greatly inflated by about 20 to 30%, and they were showing a range of 442 kilometers, and I can tell you straight away now that this car never achieved that on real-world roads. At least not the way I drive, and not in this part of the world. And so for this reason, I will be comparing my data with the EV database original real-world range. So let's do that right now. Let's compare the EV database original 354 kilometers with my data set. So if we use my average of 290 kilometers, taking into account all 10 readings, then 354 minus 290 is 64, which means there has been an 18% loss over the last 100,000 kilometers I've been driving this vehicle. However, if we use the best case scenario of 325 kilometers, then 354 minus 325 is 29 kilometers, which means there has only been an 8% loss. If we use the worst case scenario of 255 kilometers, then 354 minus 255 is 99 kilometers, which means there has been a staggering 28% loss. However, I'm happy to accept that 255 kilometers is an outlier, as you'll see in my data that most of the numbers are significantly higher than this low number. So this next chart is actually an official Tesla chart, which shows Tesla Model S and X battery capacity retention per distance traveled, with the distance on the x-axis in thousands of miles versus the y-axis, which is the battery capacity retention, shown as a percentage. So if there was a precise instrument to accurately determine the battery health of my Tesla Model S 70D, then that red dotted line is where my car would currently sit at 107,000 kilometers, or approximately 67,000 miles. And if we zoom in further into this chart, then it shows that my car should be sitting at around sort of that 90% to 96% confidence interval, with a mean of about 93% for the number of kilometers I've driven in my Tesla Model S 70D. Now, I don't know how many standard deviations that blue area around that red mean line represents, but as a Tesla owner, I've got to believe the manufacturer's data and be assured that my car, if it sits within the majority of vehicles for that age and distance traveled, should still be performing pretty well according to the Tesla chart. And I guess what's reassuring is that over time, as I drive more with this vehicle, that the battery should be able to retain at least 90% health, and the degradation seems to plateau over time. Okay, so back to my data, and you're probably wondering what I'm wondering, which is why my data seems to show greater loss compared to what Tesla is telling me that my battery health should be around that 95% retention or only 5% loss. Well, as I've alluded to before, even though I think the way I've measured my data is quite reasonable, given it's a real-world range test, I still think overall it's quite an imprecise instrument. There's no official battery health check, unlike, say, for example, smartphones, which can tell you the battery health over time. There's no way to easily determine a Tesla battery's state of health. Sure, your Tesla might have a built-in range estimate, but that's all it is. It's just an estimate and not really reflective of the real-world range. Secondly, phantom drain is an issue, and it certainly does reduce your range each day by about 1 to 2% in a Tesla Model S 70D. And every time you're idle, of course, for example, if you're waiting for someone in your vehicle, or if your car's parked somewhere hot that requires the air conditioning to cool the car down using the cabin overheat protection mechanism, or worse still, somewhere cold where the battery management system is required to heat the battery up each time, then there might be some further unexpected range loss as well. As you can see from the data, there were some relatively warm days in February during this testing period, which may have contributed more to the phantom losses, hence affecting my real-world range. I should also note too that I had the air conditioning on the whole time, which also may have affected the range overall. And the final question I have to ask is, does my Tesla have a reserve range? How many more kilometers can I achieve once the car reaches 0%? And does that help to bring up the overall range as well? Alright everyone, that is the real-world range test for my 2015 Tesla Model S 70D at 100,000 kilometers. I guess the question now is, am I happy with the result? With it measuring around 18% loss with a range of between 8 and 28%, with the caveat that the measurements were not 100% precise, taking into account factors such as phantom drain. At the end of the day, this Tesla Model S 70D is now my urban vehicle. I use this to drive around town, to go to work, pick up the children, and other small journeys around the city. And for these purposes, having close to 300 kilometers of range is more than enough as a daily commute. I'm never likely to use this vehicle again for a long road trip because we've got a Tesla Model 3 and also a Tesla Model Y on order. At most, I would use it for a day trip only. However, given that the 8-year battery warranty is expiring at the end of this year, 2023, I will certainly keep an eye on the range until then. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you've got any thoughts on my range tests or the results, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Until the next Ludicrous Feed video, happy charging!